guys, I'm interrupting this podcast to talk to you really quickly about an amazing book coming out, The Sound of Freedom, the first of the child liberation series. It goes into the details of the child rescue mission, some of these that you've heard on these podcasts and other information that you haven't heard. Excited to share this with you. Click on the link below to get your copy of The Sound of Freedom. Welcome to another episode of the Liberating Humanity podcast. We spent a lot of time talking about the child rescue missions. I've interviewed a bunch of the operators, and it's been amazing just reliving some of those experiences. Now I want to take things to a new level. I want to talk about healing, what liberating humanity is really about. The only way that we're going to eradicate child trafficking is we've got to elevate global consciousness. We've got to help people figure out how to release all of the crap in their past, whether it's their generational trauma, whether it's their childhood trauma, whether it's their relationship trauma. All of this stuff is what is creating these problems in the first place. Somebody doesn't just grow up and say, oh, I'm going to go to Ecuador and go rape a 12-year-old. No, there's some major issues that happened in their life that got them to that depraved state that they thought that was okay in any way. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not coming out with this pedophile sympathizer bull. Once they've hurt a child, they're wasting my oxygen. Okay. However, I believe that we can fix the problem before it ever becomes a problem. I believe that each one of us are contributing to the toxicity in our world by not dealing with the crap inside. You may not be somebody who would ever hurt a child. None of my operators or anybody that I associate with is somebody who would hurt a child. However, we have to ask ourselves what things that we are doing in our daily life that contribute to the crap that's going on. Are we treating other people in a way that is not building them up to their true divine self? Are we treating them in a way that is creating extra anxiety in their life, that then that trauma transfer goes and affects other people, maybe their children? So we all have to take a look inside, and we have to ask ourselves, where is it coming from? How do I fix it? How can I be a part of the solution instead of a part of the problem? And a big part of that solution is the understanding that we are not physical beings having a spiritual experience, but we are spiritual beings. Every one of us are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And part of the healing process is tuning in to that energy around us, to the spiritual world that our five senses don't pick up on. Today, I am so excited to spend a bunch of time with one of my dearest friends. Mike came into my life just a few years ago. We had done a bunch of healing ceremonies with people. We had done a bunch of work together in helping others who were suicidal, who had been abused in their childhood. Their relationships were horrible. And Mike came in as a co-facilitator at a bunch of these healing experiences, and we became dear friends. We spent a bunch of time in Colombia together recently in one of the safe houses that we're building down there and some of the healing retreats. Other areas of South America we're working on together. So Mike, thank you. Thank you for spending this time today.
You're a dear brother and a best friend and a soul brother. And it's magical to even be in this seat having this conversation. If you look at what has led up to this conversation of both of our pasts, and you said something that's very interesting of how do we tune in past our five senses, and even just how we originally met was pure magic, and what has led and the ability to ask out of whether we call it prompting or intuition to be able to get to the next phase of what we asked for in this journey. And it's been magical, and it's an honor to be here with you.
What I like about connecting with you in front of the camera is you know me better than a lot of people. And because of that, you can ask hard questions. So what I'm looking forward to is learning from you and sharing, and you pulling out questions that I may not even be thinking about. And in fact, we did an interview a long time ago, like on, I think I was on your podcast,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Is that how it
That's
was?
how it all started.
Yeah, remind me how that.
So, well, the first kind of podcast that we had done together, the conversation, we had one of our guests drop off, and one of the producers like, "Hey, I've got this really cool guy. His name's Paul Hutchinson, rich billionaire philanthropist, thinks he's Batman, and he is really."
Did you say he thinks he's
He
Batman?
thinks he's Batman, and I think it's one of those things. I can say you're Batman, so it's fun to have that come full circle. And so we had a podcast talking about like what you are up to, because this is right when you had started to say like, I've done my part in what I can do, and now it's time to start telling my story. And that was like one of the first conversations that you would start having about what you've been up to. And that really opened my eyes into a whole nother realm of like what is happening in this world, and really getting real of there are a lot of things that are broken and a lot of beautiful things, but how do we start approaching this with pure love? I think was the frequency that was being transmitted in that conversation. And so it's like, how do we go back to those conversations of pure love, and how do we start having conversations about what we want in this reality, so that way awareness can be created?
It's an old adage that, love fixes everything, and it really does, but people are watching this and I'm not going to love all these horrible people. The key is taking your kids, loving them, giving the environment that they need, loving yourself enough to release a lot of that crap that you're holding on to, so that you're not contributing to all of the toxicity of the world, and looking at humanity as a whole from a different lens. And, we were talking about meditation earlier, and I want to talk in depth about that today. Understanding how what you do in your meditation practices, and talk a little bit about mine as well. And I've come to a realization that the majority of my life, in my desire to connect with my creator, has been very much a one-way conversation. I can't tell you, when I was a little kid, my prayers were always the same. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Please forgive me for things I've done wrong. Try to do them better next time. Bless, we'll have a good day tomorrow, and have a good night's sleep tonight. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Done, right? There was no heart behind it, no thought behind it. No. Now, yes, I was taking 30 seconds of my day to talk to God, so to speak, but I never got to the point where I was really connecting and really listening. And I'm writing a book in addition to the one that's coming out soon, that's talking about the rescue missions and stuff. In fact, you can go to soundoffreedombook.com and pre-sign up for it, which is super fun. But I'm putting another one together that talks about listening, that talks about really tuning in to that still small voice of truth that all of us have within us, and using that as a way to help direct our day-to-day efforts of everything that we're trying to create. So we're not, I've heard it said so many times, we spend years climbing a ladder only to realize that it's leaning against the wrong wall, right? So how do we make sure that we're not wasting a bunch of time climbing that ladder, leaning against the wrong wall? Well, a lot of it is connecting to our higher consciousness, connecting to God. And so tell me a little bit about your process.
And I'm happy to jump in. I think one question that's relevant that we get to as we dive in, because I think you spoke about it a little bit of like it's a one-way conversation. And there's a lot of things that I want to get into on the physics, but like a question that I have for you is like, how and when were there moments when you started shifting or understanding the importance of it? Because I think sometimes when we go through trauma, we reach out or it's almost too late, and we're relying on God to solve these problems, or God, or this meditation, or this inner conversation within us. And I'm curious when that was for you, when you had that switch of like, or what you might have been going through. Because for me, as like I've gone through trials and journeys, it wasn't really until probably 2 or 3 years ago when I really had this understanding that we are a lot bigger than what we understand. And at that moment in time, then it started, the meditations, the questions, the conversations changed for me, of not just like, how can I receive to get out of this current circumstances? How can I show up to be a better person in this world? And that's when the conversations started changing for me. And I think that's important to set out, because I think in religion or just conversations, we're told that God is always there, and he is, but we're so reliant on him to solve the problems versus this inner knowing that we are also the creator in this existence. And that's super important to touch on, because that sets the stage of changing the mindset around what this is, because meditation truly is that universal consciousness once we can clean things out, and we'll get into that. But I'm curious, like, when was it for you in your life when you were like, this is so needed and I truly understand the importance of it?
For me, all my transitions happened when I hit rock bottom. I'm like, holy crap, my life is a disaster. I was in my second marriage that was headed for a divorce. I was super unhappy with all of my interpersonal relationships, and this is when I had Andy and Jimmy, who have been on some recent podcasts, two operators, who knew me really well, and we had gone through some crap. We had seen the darkest of the dark. We had seen children being sold, and that was some heavy energy to be carrying around. And yeah, we were making a difference. We were helping these kids, getting them out of hell, but we were holding a lot of that toxicity, that heaviness inside of us. And in addition to that, I was overcompensating for everything with this massive ego and this massive lifestyle, which was nothing bad with having a healthy lifestyle, but it wasn't healthy, you know? And so they brought me into a guided meditation experience that changed my life, that really helped me take a step back and understand that my ego was destroying everything that was really important in my life. And realizing that it wasn't all about Paul F. and Hutchinson, right? If I could see myself more as a part of the whole, of literally connected to humanity energetically, heart to heart, not just, hey, what's up, brother? But no, we are brothers. We are part of that same divine source together. And once I started feeling that energetic oneness and realized how much division I had been taught, division from other cultures, division from other religions, division from God, right? I was being taught this whole, you have to be a certain point to even be worthy of a relationship there. It was toxic. In fact, one of the facilitators in this experience that I had, it was a subsequent one that was another guided meditation experience. And in that experience, I was there, and I was feeling into who I was, right? Who am I? Who am I on this earth? Who is Paul Hutchinson? And I had these big, beautiful statues, these bronze statues of Zeus and Poseidon and Atlas. Atlas has got the world on his shoulders. And I'm talking to the facilitator, and I said, you know why I have that there? Sometimes I feel like I'm Atlas, right? I've got the world on my shoulders, and I've got all these people relying on me and my companies that I've built, and it was kind of an ego thing, right? Oh, I'm holding the world, right? It totally was, but I'm like, but God has really helped me. Look how strong that Atlas is there. I feel that there. That's why I have Zeus and Poseidon. It's like these gods that were protecting me as I'm holding the world. It was all ego, right? And so the facilitator, she said, Paul, that's good that you're kind of feeling into your traits and your strengths there, but she said, what about that guy over there? And she pointed. I had a statue of Yeshua that was there. People would know him as Jesus. I call him Yeshua because that was the real name of Jesus on earth at the time. And she said, how about that statue over there? What's your thoughts of that? That guy actually lived here on earth. Those guys were Greek gods. They were whatever. And I said, in this meditative space, I said, oh, I'm not worthy. I used the word worthy, right? I'm not worthy of a relationship with him. She said, why not? I said, oh, when I separated from the religion of my youth, I was told that if I wasn't part of that, then I didn't qualify for feeling that love, feeling that unconditional love, that it wasn't unconditional at the time. That conditional love is what it was, right? I didn't qualify for that conditional love. because I wasn't doing this, and this. And she said, do you really believe that? With all the good that you've done in the world, do you really think that you don't qualify for a relationship with him? And I started crying. I said, no, I don't believe that. So she says, why don't you go talk to him about it? I took this big old statue, right? Pulled this thing off of the mantle, sat on the beanbag for the next 2 hours, and rebuilt a relationship with my brother based on unconditional love, based on that spiritual awareness of everything around me, and not having to do certain things to qualify for a relationship with deity. So that was super transformational for me, and that started my process of exploring what that relationship should be and how to deepen it.
Yeah. I think you hit on so many beautiful points throughout that vein as well, because whether we talk about unworthiness or ego or pain or suffering, like what I also heard is that was the first time maybe your ego took a step back and you were able to be in a meditative state or reflective state, which is kind of the key to all this, because we have so much conditioning that has put lenses up of how we see the world or reality. And that's how we show up in this reality until we take time to reflect or have meditative programming to be able to say, is this even the existence that I want to be in? Do I want this anymore? Because otherwise we're kind of self-inflicting pain or suffering in a way that we might not even know is possible. And that's why meditation and clearing our senses is so important, because that sets up so much opportunity for us to step into new powers, new ways of being, and showing up as love. And so when you sat down with Joshua and was able to see and just feel love, there's so much ego that was taken out of that conversation, and finally be able to see and have reflection through a meditative process. And that's what's so beautiful about like what this conversation is because you can tap into so many different things. And we have a lot of voices in our head that are constructing the realities that we live in. And in order to quiet some of those narratives, we have to take a step back and say, how do I just get comfortable with myself? That's almost the first one. And so once we start sitting with ourselves and we take some of these filters off, then we can step into Joshua or some of these other things and have these eye-opening experiences that are really life-changing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was super powerful. And you touched on some things with the getting into that meditative state of releasing that ego. That's really the most valuable part of the journey experiences, and that getting into that meditative state is taking down those ego walls, taking down that unhealthy arrogance of the me, and going into this us and connection to all things. And I started sensing the literal energetic connection to everything, seeing God in the plants, seeing God in the light, seeing God in the chair, seeing God in other people, seeing that divine connection that I had with them through that energy.
It's so beautiful, because that's also a connection and a reflection of ourselves. Like if we were to take a step back and say, we are all God, we are all connected. And if we are able to see the beauty in everything that exists around us, it's also a reflection of ourselves. And it's also telling a story that we can also go back and meditate more on and see, what lesson is this trying to teach me in this moment? Not only how we can show up, but how can we heal ourselves, which is the beautiful aspect of all this.
Well, you've done a lot of work over the last year as well.
It's been, let's just say it's been a journey. And I think sometimes we have to be careful what we ask for. I think in any process or I think we all have our own divine timelines, and everything happens at the right time in the right place. And it depends what frequency you're tuning into. And if you want to show up in the world as a place of love, it's going to reorient your life to be in a more loving place. And it goes back to habits and doing the things that align with that. Meditation is the cornerstone to be able to harness that in everyday reality. And so my experience was very fast. It was life altering. And I think another piece that I want to say that I've been privileged in this, like I've had resources, I've had access to things. And I've also had amazing people in my life like you that have been able to show me how these things exist and how these work. And so I've been very privileged and very blessed to be able to go through this process. As you know, a year and a half to completely reorient somebody's life can be jolting in a way, like needless to say, like, and very blessed to be able to be handheld through this process as it is. I mean, people have spent, and you've interacted with these people, whether they're monks or Buddhists, and people that have spent their whole life meditating and being grounded in certain energies or frequencies. Like, it can be very jarring for people to go through and take a real reflection of their life and how they're showing up to be able to change it for the better. And I think that's where, at the end of the day, we can all go inward and be able to really touch on and cultivate that frequency, whatever that is, to be able to decide how we want to show up in this existence, which is, I think, a perfect segue into getting into some of the meditations and what we have found grounding in these types of practices to be able to show up and cultivate. Because I think what's cool, which is like a teaser, is like the mind controls every aspect of this reality, and meditation is the gateway. So it's we're starting to hear a lot of things come out about remote viewing or manifestation or being able to heal past trauma, and those are all reflecting on this unified consciousness that everybody's kind of starting to learn about and feel, and science is just being able to catch up to that. But I think that kind of segues into, how do we start asking more questions about what is possible and really being able to sit with these beautiful pieces. Like, our body is the most beautiful piece of technology ever made. And how do we sit with that? And how do we understand it? How do we ask more questions? And how do we keep evolving and showing up better in the world?
Well, you've touched a couple times on the word frequency, and for me in my meditation space, it's like those old radios. You remember how you had to turn the knob just right to be able to pick up the radio station, right? And if you changed it, then it was a completely different station. You could have 80s rock on one thing and piano music, just a couple little things over. Now, the crazy thing is all of those frequencies, all those radio stations are already here. They're in the air already. They're already going through. But you can't hear that piano music if the radio's off. And if you're tuned into the 80s rock, you can't hear the piano music either, right? And so it's a matter of tuning into that frequency that aligns with what you want to be listening to at the time, right? It's the same thing in that meditative space. So for me to really tune in to that frequency of my higher consciousness, to my divine mission, to God, to tune in there, I had to ask myself, okay, if my goal is to tune in there, what is that frequency? What channel do I need to be listening to hear God? There's no doubt that if we live in this spiritual world and there's virtuous intelligences, there's also non-virtuous ones as well. We have to be aware of the fact that there's this battle between good and evil. There's this battle between control and freedom. There's this battle that has existed for millions of years. And what drives somebody to abuse a child, right? What drives somebody to hit their wife? What drives somebody to take a life? What is that driving force? And what is the driving force that brings about philanthropy? What is that driving force that makes it so that we want to do good in the world and take the coat off our back and hand it to the guy who's freezing on the side of the road? Whatever. What is it that's driving that versus driving the other? Well, it's the frequency that we're tuning into. And I realized that for a large part of my life, the frequency that I was tuning into was arrogance and lust and pride and greed. And these were the kind of things that were the frequency I was tuning. And it was manifesting those things in my life, right?
And I want to take a second there because this is like really important that we in this existence can still create amazing things. You
Yeah.
created $1 billion company in that frequency. And so sometimes it can be hard to really see where we're actually behaving from.
Mhm.
And I think that's super important to touch on. And something that I can say because I know you so deeply is like there are that reflection of what that is being broadcasted can still create things. But you have to understand, like, and I'll let you tell it, but like, were you the happiest in those moments?
Yeah, exactly. And realize I tell people there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with having a great lifestyle. There's nothing wrong with having a basketball court in your basement, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having the coolest parties in the valley. There's nothing wrong with that. However, if your reasoning behind having that big party with everybody there, if your reasoning behind that is to artificially blow up an ego because you're feeling some empty space inside of you that's not being filled in healthy ways, then it's going to create some challenges, right? And so if and it says in a lot of ancient scriptures for different religions, it says that it's okay to have these goals, to have riches in your life, as long as you do so with the intention to do good. You know, I tell people the Good Samaritan wasn't broke, right? You have to have a little bit of money to take care of that guy on the side of the road, right? I think about all the philanthropic stuff that I've been able to do in my lifetime because I created a successful company. It's been beautiful. I mean, and I've been able to make massive good in the world. Literally, the Sound of Freedom movie, of which I was the primary investor in and executive producer, that movie has created a global change. There's no way that that movie would have happened if I hadn't had the money and the resources to be able to start that movement in the first place, right? Maybe somebody else would have come in, but it took money to create that good. And so those things are okay. But the real question is, was it fulfilling to me if I was having these big parties and this big house and these nice cars and stuff just to fulfill a broken ego? Does that make sense? So,
And that's what's so like beautiful going back to the meditation side and the frequency is what are we showing up as in the world and how are we taking the frequency that we embody and how do we amplify that and magnetically bring that into reality through meditation and some of these other practices because reality is just, I mean, we're living in a holographic universe and whatever we are embodying is how we're going to show up. If we act from a wounded place, that's how we're going to show up in the world. We're going to attract people that are wounded. And so when you talk about child trafficking or some of these people that are doing these deeper acts, they're coming from a place of woundedness. And all we can have is love and compassion for them. I mean, they're doing horrible acts, but at the end of the day, there are brothers and sisters too. And they've just forgotten what it's like to be loved.
yeah. Well, we can love them behind bars. I'm not going to let them touch another child.
Nope. There's a place in society for those things, and it can be done with grace.
Yeah,
Is what
exactly.
it has to
And
be.
that's really the key is asking ourselves, why is that person acting in that way? Why are they creating that degree of pain in other people? There must be some deep pain in themselves. And so again, I've said this before, but my greatest dream as I was doing the undercover missions was if I could help those children not ever experience that pain in the first place. And what does that look like? It's not just fighting the fire with fire. It is figuring out where that fire started, why that destruction was even there in the first place. Taking a few steps back, realizing that at one point, that perpetrator hadn't crossed that line. At one point, that perpetrator was a teenager with a lot of pain, or maybe was addicted to drugs or pornography or whatever else, and eventually it led them down this road where they were acting out and on these horrible fantasies, et cetera. But it all started with their perception of themselves, their perception of other people, and having this fantasy of something that they wanted to pursue that was going to cause pain in the lives of others. And you said something about creating this hologram. This world around us is literally created by our thoughts. Those perpetrators, they didn't just all of a sudden end up in that place where they were abusing a child. It started out with a fantasy. It started out with them thinking things that were leading them down this road of objectification of women, starting out, or addiction to things that weren't healthy from an intimacy standpoint that continued down this road. All those things, everything starts with a thought. That's really where our manifestation of our world comes from. And I remember years ago, I was at Tony Robbins called me and he said, "Hey, Paul, I know you're friends with this radio commentator, Glenn Beck. It'd be cool if you brought him to one of my events, a UPW event." And I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." So I give Glenn a call, and him and his son come with us, and we go to this event. And there's this part in Tony's conference where it's like a live meditation for 15,000 people, but it's a visualization of where you want to be. It's not the quiet inward meditation, but it's a clear visualization of what you want to create. You say, okay, the world's a hologram. The world is whatever it is that we want to create. It's there. We can literally create anything in our future that we want. And he has this, and I realized, I've used this technique in creating multi-billion-dollar companies. I've used this technique in finding trafficked children and building the philanthropy. All of these things I had used, but I had never used that technique in creating the relationship of my dreams, right? And so I wrote down in detail what that relationship looked like in my life, and everything on that list is what my now wife is. She just showed
She's
up.
amazing.
She's
Let's
freaking awesome.
Let's give her a shout out.
We met in Haiti, of all places. We met there. I was actually at a funeral for one of my operators, but she was donating her time at the orphanage. But everything on that list. Now, God knew I wasn't happy, but I never told him what I wanted, right? Him, her, whatever you call God, right? I had never been specific about what I wanted in that part of my life. And as soon as I got specific about it, then it's like you're co-creating with divinity. You're co-creating with the universe. You just have to decide what it is that you want, change your thought processes, because at the time because of my actions, it was proof that I wanted the life that I had, the dysfunctional relationships that were in my life. And so by changing that thought process and deciding exactly what I wanted, I was able to create this entirely new reality in my life.
One, and even take a step back to having that thought process, like think about the trajectory that has changed because you've called her in, and now what are you co-creating together? And it all started from a meditation. It all started from a very simple, I am not content or happy with this where I'm at, and you wanted to make something better for yourself. And now the energy that she brings, like you light up with her. You are so happy with her. You are passionate. You're able to see the world differently because you took that time to sit with yourself and meditate and really get rid of those other thoughts in your head to be able to bring in what you really desired.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is so in line with everything that we're creating, everything, the safe houses for the children, building out the Child Liberation Foundation, everything is just blossoming because I'm in alignment now with my mission, with my real desires of doing good and living a life of abundance in all areas, not just financial abundance, but abundance of love and giving and everything that comes when you're really living in that alignment space.
And how we get started in whether a reflection of this, I think there's different phases of like what would motivate someone to actually jump in and start doing the work of meditation or creation at this different phase. Mine came from a place of pain. That's when I first started being like, my reality is very painful right now. I was in a situation where I couldn't get peace, and meditation was one of the only things that allowed me to quiet my mind because my thoughts were racing. I was unhappy. I couldn't find tranquility. And, you go to a therapist and they're like, just imagine running water. And you're like, how do I do that when everything's burning down around me, right? It's like, how do you just control your thoughts to even be able to manifest your dream partner? And I think that's where I want to offer hope for anybody listening is like, anybody can start at any point in time to be able to do this, because the things that we're talking about have taken a lot of practice. And if I were to offer anything, is like, start today and start listening to yourself, and just carve time out for yourself to be able to understand what's even in your mind. So that way you can show up and be able to call in these amazing things, because at any point our life trajectory can change, and it can change instantly if we have the desire to do it. And so whatever that motivation is, listen to it and sit with it, and just have gratitude and compassion for whatever the situation is, and know that you can call in whatever reality your future could possibly dream of.
I tell people that if you don't decide where you want to go, you'll get nowhere with amazing accuracy. Right?
That is so true.
So
Yep.
we just have to decide what we want,
Yep.
and you could literally create it. If you wanted to have a, beautiful house on the beach and whatever, that's what you want. Just decide that's what you want, and start co-creating with the universe to create it. If you want a super healthy family with lots of great time with your kids and whatnot, just start going down that road, and it can happen as well. But you have to decide what it is that you want first. Because if you don't know what you want, then how is God going to know what you want? How is the universe going to? You have to decide. That's the whole thing. We sit back and think, I'm just going to be a boat on the sea and just go wherever the wind takes you. No, put that rudder down. You have the ability to steer in your life. You just have to decide what it is that you want, and start co-creating with the universe, co-creating with God, and anything in your life is possible. Now, for me, I nailed the whole manifestation thing a number of years ago, in creating the fund. I have so many stories about how, John and I would say, we're going to be $1 billion fund and all this stuff. So that visualization was in me being the driver, was something I was able to create a long time ago, and figuring out from a business standpoint.
The confidence to be able to step into other things because you knew it in your bones that this was possible.
I had proven the fact that your thoughts and your words become reality. I had proven that over and over and over again. Now, but that was on the manifestation side, the visualization side. And that started really helping me understand that the energetic world around us, and how we're creating and literally attracting things into our life with our words and our actions and our thoughts. Then it took a whole step deeper when I started doing the undercover work and finding the children, wherein many of those operations, it wasn't following logic and protocol. It was listening and truly feeling led to the place where those children were being held, and places to keep our team safe, et cetera. But it took an entirely new step in the last year and a half, where I had, about 8 years ago, I had started doing some of the guided meditation, some of the plant medicine work, et cetera. But going into a daily quiet your mind practice of being able to listen and receive direction from God, direction from my higher consciousness, direction from the universe around us, and understanding that my 5 senses and what I know about the world is what I've watched on social media and TV and the books I've read and the people I've talked to. Yet there's so much more going on globally that and throughout the universe that I have not witnessed with my 5 senses, that can gather super valuable insight for me in my life, and where I can go and what I can create, et cetera. So that process was something that happened just within the last year. So, and I want to learn more about your meditative process, and then I want to talk a little bit about mine as well.
Yeah, and I think for everybody, meditation is different, and the purpose and the intent, and I think it's being intentional about what you're doing it for. Like, I think whether it's in different settings, whether it's in business or relationships, and for me, it always starts with a fundamental of, how do I get and remember who I am, and how do I sit with myself to be able to show up in this reality. And so it could be different situations, whether it's going on a podcast and be able to understand what needs to be said. And I think quieting the mind to a point where you can actually receive that is beautiful because we have so much stimulation around us that it's hard to go inward sometimes. And so going into that meditative state, whether it's quiet or a walking meditation, to be able to really calm the body down, to be able to get into a space where we can think differently is a one way to phrase it, because our our brain controls and filters a lot of the information that we're receiving, and our heart is actually one of the strongest quote unquote brains in our body. And if we can get in tuned with our heart, we can start listening and be able to gathering more information. And so for me, my meditation practice, depending on the situation, can vary greatly. But what I like to do is first calm myself down, be able to get into a heart space so I can remember who I am, that I am love, that I do care deeply about everything around me. And then I can start directing some of that energy or frequency to be able to understand what information is needed. How do I need to be showing up? How do I be able to call in what's needed for certain situations to be able to really gather the information to have a better understanding of what I need to do next? And so for me, whether it's like, if I were to paint an ideal picture of what a meditation could look like, having a quiet space, being able to sit down. But I think whether it's some breath work that you get into to calm the body, but also being able to tap into that frequency that we've talked a little bit about, of like, if I know that I have to be in a place of love in order to receive and be my most authentic self, because anywhere else I'm receiving things from a place of fear. And if there's fear involved in that meditation, you're not going to be able to show up as your most authentic self and be able to have your mind cleared, because otherwise your body is racing, and that will show up whether your heartbeat is elevated. But to be able to calm down in a place of love, or even sometimes being able to tap into childhood memories of pure bliss and joy, can help calm the mind and the nervous system to be able to access whether memories or needed information it is to be able to create in this reality. And the steps to meditating, it could be anywhere from a 15 to a 30-minute to an hour long meditation, depending on what the vibe or the frequency that you're trying to tap into. But I think going back, and as a ground rule, where are you showing up and are you tapping into your heart?
Every single meditation that I do, the to be effective of really listening, I have a process that I call matching frequencies. Okay. So because to me, God is infinite, unconditional love. That's that frequency and that knob that I need to tune into, right, to be able to really listen. And so what I do is I start with something that's easy, right? I start with a person in this world that's super easy for me to feel unconditional, infinite love for. And for me, it's my daughter Kira. She is all just beautiful love and heart, and she wouldn't hurt a fly. Literally, if there's a fly in her house, she'll open the door and shoo it out. Right? That's
I
the
can
kind
attest to that.
it's just amazing, just soul of just pure blissful love. And so I tune into that. I tune into that frequency at first, and then I expand that frequency to others in my immediate family, to my wife, to my sons, to my parents, my sisters, and I expand that, and I hold that same frequency. I'm mirroring that frequency. And then once I feel that there, then for me, I then expand it to myself, because sometimes it's harder to have that unconditional love for yourself than it is for your kids and other people. And so again, I'm mirroring that frequency of unconditional, infinite love that I feel there. And then I feel that same for myself. I feel that God-like, Christ-like love for Paul, and releasing judgment, releasing all the stupid crap that I did, right? Whatever, I'm releasing that. I'm releasing that and feeling infinite love for me. And then I expand that to the rest of humanity, including those people who have hurt me, those people who have taken advantage of me or taken money from me or talked, really people you would consider enemies, right? I feel that unconditional, infinite love for humanity as a whole. Once I'm in that resonance, that frequency, then I take it to the next step. And for me, I also feel that high vibration in the emotion of gratitude. And so what I do with the gratitude is, again, I mirror frequencies. I start with expressing that, and I say this verbally, out loud, I'll say, I feel deep gratitude for, and then I talk about the things in my life that I'm grateful for right now that are physically here, that it's impossible not to be grateful for these things, right? And that could include people like my wife and other people in my life, right? So I express that gratitude, and then I express gratitude for the things in my past, even the difficult things, right? That brought me to where I am today, and expressing that I am grateful for. And then for the things in the future, the things that I'm creating in the future. Faith, gratitude for the things that have not happened yet that you're creating, that's the purest form of faith. And so I'm grateful for all that is, all that has been, and all that will be. And I feel that just infinite gratitude for everything. And those are the two frequencies that I tune into before I take it to my next step of breath work, of a whole process that I go through in turning off my rational, logical brain that gets in the way of listening sometimes.
And I want to like touch on something because I think we in this like modern age have forgotten what sacred emotions are. Because what you're talking about, whether it's gratitude, love, faith, these are emotions that people throughout time have been tapping into and saying, how do I bring that into my body with intention versus am I like in a biblical setting trying to summon God and different things? But it's like being able to sit with those types of emotions are actually sacred in a way because um, you're tapping into such a high level of frequency and love and compassion of without fear.
And you've touched on fear a couple times. The Bible is full of fear not, fear not, fear not. Some people say it's in there 365 times. It's not. But it's in there a lot, right? It is. And in my meditative space, one of the things that continues to come as a common thread that is coming through me when I'm in that space are the words fear not, of just releasing anything from a fear standpoint. Because in reality, fear and faith cannot exist in the same person at the same time on the same subject. The reason behind it is, in a way, they're the same power, right? People who believe that bad things will happen to them actually attract that into their lives. People that believe that good things will happen to them attracted it into their life. So faith is believing that good things are going to happen. Fear is believing that bad things are going to happen. It's throwing that energy out and attracting those things that you don't want in your life by putting that emotion of fear into it, right? And so I've seen so many examples of people who, I knew that was going to happen. Well, that's why it happened, right? Right?
Imagine that.
Wow, ding, light bulb goes off. Yeah, that's what happened. Is you knew it was going to happen and you feared it and you attracted it. And maybe, some people who don't believe in the whole spiritual realm say, well, yeah, well, it's because when you think about it a lot, then you say things and then this happens. And well, yeah, whatever it is, whether it's your actions, your words, your connection with the universe around you, you are literally attracting those things that you're putting emotion into.
Yep. And I think like now that we have like a really good groundwork for a lot of the frequency stuff, a lot of it can be tactical after that, and depending on different ways that you want to achieve these higher states. And for me, anytime I drop into a meditation, depending on how deep I want to go, I always think or picture of a place that I've been to that I feel unconditional love or grounding with Mother Nature. So I have a place in Hawaii where I always go and I always sit underneath a waterfall because that for me is just a very happy, content place that I can connect with Earth because Earth has been here holding us for all of time.
Yeah.
And the science that's coming out around negative ions and waterfalls and just being in nature is so grounding. And so for me, being in that grounded space allows me to then free my mind up, knowing that I'm safe to be able to go into higher dimensions of consciousness, to be able to think and create and access higher places that and information that normally wouldn't come when we're so distracted in today's world.
Yeah.
And I think for you, it might be breath work and some other things that accelerate that process further.
And one thing that you and I both share is the use of sacred hape. For those who don't know what that is, it's tobacco is one of the most ancient medicines known to man and is a powerful grounding tool. Now, I'm not talking about smoking a cigarette and messing up your lungs and getting addicted to nicotine. These, unfortunately, there have been so many ancient tools that have been bastardized by modern civilization. One example is cocaine. One of the most destructive things in humanity is the addiction to things like cocaine and heroin, stuff like that. They're just so destructive to families and destructive to lives, and you're just addicted to these things. Well, that cocaine comes from the coca leaf. The coca leaf is ancient medicinal. The powder form of it is called mumbai, right? And it's very much a grounding tool. There's no psychedelic. You don't go on a trip. You don't nothing. But it's very grounding and connecting with Mother Earth. And what they do is they take this to create cocaine. They take the coca leaf and they mix it with gasoline, with ammonium, with all kinds of crap, to create what is this horrible drug that's destroying families. But the sacred origin of it is the coca leaves, and it's beautiful. It's grounding. You can't get them in the U.S., but you can in Latin America. The other thing is hape. Now, hape you can get in the U.S. You can go online. We have some links and stuff with Liberating Humanity that we've connected with a few as well. But what it is it's a powder form of tobacco that is, and you know this, I'm just more telling you guys, a powder form of tobacco that is grown by shamans in usually the Amazon jungle, is grown with frequency, with energy, with love, with intention, mixed with some other herbs and whatnot in this powder form. And you blow it and it comes up your nose. And immediately, for me, it's one of the things that helps me ground, that helps me just turn off all of the distracting thoughts that are going on in my mind, and helps me get into a heart space where I can listen from here, not make up things from here, but listen from here. And when I'm in that meditative space, if I've got too much going on here, nothing comes in, because I'm trying to talk and decide what I should be hearing and all this crap. Instead, I've got to turn that off. I've got to settle my mind. I've got to ground to Mother Earth. And I have a few different processes, and hape is one that we both use as part of that meditative space.
And it's a beautiful, sacred energy to be able to tap into. And I think one of the things, and I think this will come up in various other conversations as well, is like the intention. I think having an intention of what we're using it for, but also how do we also conduct the power of our mind to bring that intention into our reality is super important, because hape in and of itself, it is a clearing, it is a grounding, but it can also be fueled with an intention that we go into these settings with, because the intention can drive whatever aspect of consciousness we want to get into. And so hape, mambe, and bead are all ancient tools that have been used for thousands of years. And we're almost just kind of starting to remember them here in Western society, because we've forgotten how beautiful they are and how much they can benefit in meditative practices, or connecting back with our roots and who we were before we've put all these filters on ourselves.
Exactly. Another thing that we both do in different ways is breath work, and breath work is I think we all just take air for granted. I've been breathing since I was a baby. I remember in some of my early meditations, my wife, Vanessa, she'd be like, okay, now I want you to breathe. And I'm like, I am breathing. How do you think I'm alive? I am breathing. She said, no, breathe. No, I am breathing. How do you think I'm even talking? I'm breathing. No, the difference is consciously breathing, coming in through your nose. There's a book called Breath that's fantastic. And he talks about how throughout society we've gone to mouth breathers instead of nose breathers, but there's the circulation that comes through the nostrils on the in-breath actually activates the oxygen molecules and everything in there, similar to the activation of water when it comes through a waterfall and you're mixing it and whatnot. There's a lot of energetic power that is coming into it in that process, in that swirling process breathing in through your nose. In fact, years ago, I had a company that helped people overcome anxiety and depression. One of the tools that we taught people was, besides changing their negative habit patterns of thought, et cetera, we had a cognitive restructuring program helping people change things in their life, not just taking extra drugs and crap, but changing things in their life and bringing in tools of eating properly and changing negative thinking patterns, but breath work as well, that would help them calm their hearts and overcome their anxiety. And we taught a lot of different things, and you guys can look these things up online. One of the things that we taught was what we call the box method, or the 4-4-4-4, where it's 4 seconds in through your nose, holding it on the upside for 4 seconds, and blowing it out through your mouth for 4 seconds, then holding it for 4 seconds, and then in through your nose. And it's a calming tool. There's other ones. I called one the 4-7-8 method, whereas 4 seconds in, holding it for 7 seconds, and then a slower out through your breath for 8 seconds. There's another one that's a kind of a body awareness one, where again, it's in through your nose, focusing on certain sections of your body, starting with your toes and moving all the way up to the top of your head, but then acknowledging whatever's there, the pain or the sensations that are there, and then anything that doesn't belong, just breathing it out through your mouth. These are all calming exercises. Now, there's other ones that are more energetic ones, like Bastrita and others, where it's, fast ones. You can look those up online. I'll do a whole seminar on just breathing exercises. But for me, to take my meditation to the next step, for me, I do what they call a holotropic DMT release breath work, which is heavy duty stuff. It's coming in and filling your lungs all the way up and all the way out over and over again. I do like 30 repetitions of just fully oxygenating everything. And then I blow it out. And on the out breath, holding it for a minute for the first one, and then a minute and a half on the next one. Now, your brain releases, when you're born and when you die, your brain releases DMT. And other times in your life, there's this chemical that is released that helps you through difficult times and whatnot. Well, through a holotropic breathwork exercise, you can actually release DMT as part of that exercise. And for me, it's a process that I use after I get into that state of unconditional love and that state of gratitude, and I'm setting that frequency. Then I do the breath work that helps me just clear out all those distracting thoughts. Then I do a little bit of hape, and then I start my meditation in setting sacred space, and we'll go into that. So do you do a breath work on yours as well?
Yeah, breath is like super instrumental into calming the body. And I think breath has been a technique throughout all of time to access different portals. Because if you look at the body, it really is a piece of technology in the holographic universe. And if we're able to use it as a sacred way to access, whether it's box breathing or some of my mentors will call it tuttling or different things, because our vagus nerve is the longest nerve from our brainstem down to our perineum. And it controls every aspect of what that is. And if we are a toroidal being, and tapping into certain aspects of breath, depending on what it is, can actually connect with space-time and continuum. And so if we're able to reset our body and be able to have our heart in a spot that is purely connected in a space that is pure and clean, or reset in a way, we can then start interacting with other space-time. And so for me, it's really important that I am doing the breath work to be able to clean out my energetic body, to then be able to tap into other dimensions of consciousness or space-time that I normally wouldn't, because our body actually holds a lot of emotion and frequency, whether it's trauma or different things. And if we don't clear that out, we're just getting right back into the same cycle. And so for me, it's super important to have a very clean vessel and be able to go through that breathwork process. So I like to do about 5 to 10 minutes of the box breathing. And then depending on what I'm going for, I'll step into these other ways of breathing to be able to reset and then be able to access whether it's higher levels of consciousness, or if I need to calm down or bring in more masculine energy, that can be the breath of fire. Depending on what it is, you have all these tools in your toolbox to be able to then step into the higher levels of meditation.
I love that. I love that. And again, guys, just so you know, if you don't remember from the beginning of this, all of this is about healing. That's what liberating humanity is all about, is figuring out ways to heal humanity so that we don't end up in a position where we've got child trafficking and all this crap. And so super excited about where we're going with this. Now, on the meditation stuff, I can't emphasize enough the importance of what I call setting sacred space, right? Whether it's the in the journey space, in the psychedelic tools and healing and whatnot, setting sacred space there, or whether it's the meditation and prayers, etc. When you are thinning that veil, and that's really what a lot of these tools do, is they're thinning the veil. And what I mean by that is all of us come to this earth with this veil of forgetfulness. I don't remember being alive before this, or past lives, or with God, or what. I don't remember any of that stuff, right? We all have this veil. And the thinning of that veil is what happens with some of these journey experiences, with the meditation, etc. It's thinning that veil so that you can effectively feel and see the other side, other dimensions, past lives, whatever. But when you're thinning that veil, the understanding that most religions believe that there are a third of the intelligences of heaven are non-virtuous ones,
Yep.
fell from that space. And so if indeed there's this energetic battle between light and darkness, good and bad, whatever else, aligning yourself with that right energy and setting that sacred space, is what I call it, is super important. And so what I actually say the words after I go through that whole the frequency and the energy of love, and then I go through the breath work and the hape. My next step is I verbalize taking myself to this place. For you, it's the waterfall in Hawaii. For me, it's this beautiful white room that is high above the clouds, that I can just see everything, and it's protected. And I say this room is protected on all sides, wherein only love and truth and virtue are allowed to enter. And by setting those boundaries, so to speak, then I'm able to start asking questions. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to ask questions and end up having something that is not aligned with my higher self, not aligned with my true divine mission on earth, etc. If I have false information coming in, it's going to lead me astray. And so being super careful to set those boundaries there. And then I go through this process of visualizing this connection with the source of all creation, with God. I imagine this beautiful bright light at the center of the universe, and where all of creation, all of knowledge, all of light, everything comes from. And I imagine this beam of light that is traveling through the universe and comes into this room and into the crown of my head. And it's just a process of connection, of connecting to that frequency of infinite, that frequency of the source of all creation, etc. And in that space, I'm able to drop into a theta state in my brain. That they actually hooked up these little connectors on my head at one point when we were in Costa Rica, and tested, and of being able to take myself into that theta state of being able to just not be anything in my logical mind controlling, but in a fully awake state of receiving. And that's how I get into that space. And sometimes I'm just asking questions and saying, what are my next steps here? How should I handle this person? Or what's some more knowledge that I need to be able to share on podcasts, whatever it is. And then I just wait for that divine connection to be coming through and enlightening that path.
Well, I think you touch on some very important things there as far as like sacred space, because every thought, emotion, experience ever recorded in humanity is in higher levels of consciousness. And if we don't set that sacred space, we could get information that isn't pure, or could be corrupted, or could be from a place of fear or some other type of not the type of energy that we want to necessarily be gathering. And so what you're touching on is so important, because it really is like a guiding beacon to be able to access this purity. And everything that you touched on that led up to this allows you to resonate and receive that information in a way that your body and your soul can actually be able to process it. Because if you hadn't gone through that, you're receiving such pure love and information that normally like we wouldn't be able to necessarily handle in a moment that we could then process and then come out and be able to do something with it. And I think what's so like amazing about that is once we are able to tap into that frequency, that higher level of love and consciousness, then we can start asking and being curious about how we can help others, and not just for our own self, but then how do we show up and what do we see the needs are in this world? Because everything is interconnected. And if we can have an understanding of like how do we show up and continue to bring that information in, then things start moving at a faster pace.
As a wrap up on this one, um, everything in this world is interconnected, and the more we think that, oh, that thing that's happening to those kids in Colombia, that doesn't affect me, that is you, right? That is us. We are all one. We are all connected, and feeling that interconnectedness, I think, is a vital step in healing humanity. The wars that we see all over the world with is all based on greed and division and believing that one group has the birthright from God and another group doesn't. It's all crap. The more we can really tune in to the energy of all things, that connected heart to heart space that we are all in, the more that we can start tapping into that still small voice of truth within us, and that the quicker we can heal this toxicity that is creating wars, that is creating child abuse in the home, that is creating child trafficking. All of this stuff can be healed, but it has to start. It has to start with humanity releasing all of this dogma, all of this 10,000 years of division of different peoples and different races and different genders and all this crap that's just dividing, and connecting with our higher purpose, connecting with God. If we could take 100,000 people or 1,000,000 people out of the billions that we have and have a guided meditation experience where everybody gets into that heart space, the resonance of those people by itself will create a wave which will affect all of humanity. And that's what has to happen. We are headed for a beautiful future or total destruction. And we're on the precipice right now. I mean, you look at the news right now, we're closer to a state of nuclear war than we've ever been in history. It is scary to see how all of this division and this hatred and this ego and this arrogance is destroying this earth, is destroying humanity. And if we don't wake up, today and say, we need to come together and learn how to tap in to this higher consciousness, learn how to release all this toxicity that is pervasive throughout humanity today. If we don't learn to do that quickly, the end result is we're going to be forced into humility. We're going to be in a place where there's so much contention and so much war, and it's going to be right on our doorsteps. And people are going to fall to their knees and say, what has gone wrong? And at that point, hopefully we'll be able to change course and move into this new dimension, into this place that has been prophesied for thousands of years by all religions, that we're going to come to this place, this 1,000 years of peace. I believe that that's here. And yes, I believe that we have to go through a time of turmoil to get there. But how we get to that 1,000 years of peace, how we get there, is not God coming back and waving his hand and saying, okay, everybody nice to each other. No, we have to be conscious about where we are individually and release all of that stuff that doesn't belong to us and that higher version of ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. And I think you painted a beautiful picture of what could the world be like if we had people meditating all over the world in this love and the frequency, and not just them being in that meditative state, but then imagine them going out into their communities and be able to share that in the lives that they'll touch. Because at the end of the day, if we look at what's happening, are we acting from love or are we acting from fear? And that can change the course of all of humanity coming up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Liberating Humanity. This is what it's all about, guys. You wonder why I named it Liberating Humanity. It's because I've spent 10 years doing undercover work and rescuing children and working and fighting child trafficking, only to come to the realization that the solution was not just fighting fire with fire. The solution was not going in and pulling another 20 kids out of hell. The solution was figuring out how to change the global collective consciousness, how to help people heal from all of the crap that we've been dealing with in our own childhood and our own relationships and our own ego, how to help humanity move past this division energy that we're all so tied into. And the only way that's going to happen is for each of us to look inward and to look heavenward. This is not a religious conversation. This is a conversation where everybody, I don't care if you're Christian, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Buddhist, whether you're Hindu, it doesn't matter. I don't even care if you're atheist, it doesn't matter. Each of us need to look inward. We need to learn how to meditate. We need to learn how to quiet our minds and listen from a place of the heart. When we learn how to do that, then I promise things like global war, child trafficking, all of these horrific things in our world, we can fix if we learn how to come to that place, a place of love. So thank you. Thank you again for joining us on the Liberating Humanity podcast. I'm Paul Hutchinson. I'm here with my dear friend, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you so much.